Okay, I want to say something really fast just so I can get it out of my system and we never have to talk about it again. And I, again, like last time, I apologize for this, but I think I mentioned in Rear Window that the character can't be sexually active, and so he, as a replacement for sex, he has voyeurism. And then I said something idiotic, which college teachers say and get made fun of for, and I totally understand it. But I was like, "Oh, the telescope lens is like a penis replacement because it's longer than it is wide. Whatever, it's like his replacement. His dick isn't working, so his telescope is a substitute. Fine." So I don't want to make a big deal out of this in Gilda, but it's interesting that in a movie about Balin's trouble with his wife and her sexuality, that the weapon is a cane that has a knife in it, right? It's longer than it is wide, and it extends, and hatred is really just another form of love, which they discuss in the movie. And so I don't want to go on a whole thing about how Balin's cane is a dick replacement and he's having problems with his wife. But I said it. Now we can all just keep that in the back of your head rumbling around there. It's embarrassing, so don't say it out loud. But just it's in there. I said it. Fine. So I want to move on to talk about some more interesting things. The other thing that's set up at the beginning of the movie is going to become a theme that's going to run through. So that thing about the three of us, Balin, the Kane, and Gilda, that I actually think is one of the most important things in the movie. Which is that when you think about it, this is a movie that's sort of about love and romance in some strange ways. It's about romantic relationships. But when you picture a romantic relationship in your mind, you tend to picture two people, right? You think it's a movie about a couple, and how are they going to get together, and are they not going to get together, and whatever. So you think about that as being two people, but in Gilda, it's always three or more people that is the issue. The entire movie, there are three people, and I'm gonna call this again and again triangulation, which is a ridiculous thing to say. But you hear the word triangle, and there, triangle means three sides. So you might want to think about Gilda, Balin, and Johnny as being this triangle that I can't do a triangle, but it's a triangle that just goes through the whole movie. So it's interesting that they set up the weapon, Johnny and Balin, because again, that's the triangle, and then Gilda comes to replace the weapon because she's more dangerous than any weapon. Um, and the movie moves forward, but you'll see this again and again and again and again in the film. It's always about three people. Um, when Gilda, for example, let's say when Balin is not around and Johnny's with Gilda at the dinner table at the beginning, one of the first scene where Johnny's alone with Gilda, Gilda immediately goes and flirts with some guy and she dances with him, right? So it's just two people dancing, Gilda and this guy that she picked up. But it's not two people because Johnny's watching them. It's three people. So it's Gilda, the guy she's dancing with, and Johnny's watching them, and she knows Johnny's watching them. So again, three people, and this happens again and again and again in the film. Gilda runs around with men, and Johnny knows about it, and so you get the three people: Gilda, the guy she's with, and Johnny, and it repeats and it repeats and it repeats. It's always three people. It's always triangulation. So it's very interesting that they set this up right at the beginning of the movie with the Kane, Balin, and Johnny, and these men who are united by a weapon. Anyway, it's fascinating. So the other thing that's set up right at the beginning of the movie that's going to follow us through the whole. This is why it's really important to pay attention to the first like 10 minutes of a movie, because they tend to set up. A good movie will set up all the things that the rest of the movie will spend its time thinking about. The other thing that's set up at the beginning of the movie is this idea that Johnny is a man with no past and all future. Um, Balin also says he has no past and all future. And later, when they meet Gilda, she will say, or he will say of her, that she has no past and all future because these people have run away from their past in various ways. That Gilda has left who she was behind and she's sort of reinventing herself in this totally other country in Argentina. And that because Gilda and Johnny are from like Brooklyn, and they've gone to a totally other country so they can be new people and leave their pasts behind. And of course, it doesn't work because Gilda is Johnny's past and Johnny is Gilda's past, and these things it never works out. But that's what people say. It's a very American idea. The past is the past. Forget all about that. I'm gonna reinvent myself as this new thing, and it's a major part of American literature. It's like, for example, I am sure you've heard of The Great Gatsby, very famous book of American literature. It's exactly what that book is about. It's about somebody who thinks they can leave their past behind and start anew. Guess what? You can't do that. Your past comes back to haunt you. Mad Men. exact same thing. It's about a guy who thinks he can leave his past behind and become someone new. If you know Mad Men, the guy's name is literally Don Draper. Don means to put clothes on. Drape is fabric, to just put. It's a new outfit. Just it's like his identity is just something he wears, because this is his new life, and he can just change who he is by changing his clothes. All right. So this is a theme that follows us through the whole movie. Is this idea: can you reinvent yourself without a past? And of course you can't, because there's another very goofy movie that I shouldn't be quoting here. It's The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. I'm not recommending you watch that movie, but it is a movie that exists. He says in that movie, they say, be nice to people, because wherever you go, there you are. Right? You take yourself with you. You can't escape the past because the past is in here, and you take it with you wherever you go. So that's what's happening to these characters, is that they imagine they can be free of the past, and they can't. And of course, the larger issue of leaving the past behind in this movie is the Nazis. And it takes a minute to even notice what's going on there with that aspect of the movie, but I think it's an important thing to keep in mind. One scene I think that immediately confuses students is they announce, and just like that, the war ended. And there's like a newspaper that comes on screen, and everybody's cheering. And then there's like one guy who's not cheering, and then somebody sees him not cheering and hits him, and then he starts cheering also. And then you never see that guy again, or any of those people, and you forget all about it. That's an important detail in the movie. The reason that guy is not cheering for the end of the war is because he's German and his side lost the war, so he's not happy because this is World War II. The other thing that the movie doesn't fill you in on, but which you would need a little bit of sort of historical whatever knowledge to sort of know, is that after the war, a lot of Nazis escaped to Argentina, which is the country that Gilda takes place in Argentina. So it's it's something that so the point is there's ex-Nazis everywhere, and that's where Balin gets his money. Is the Germans were going to lose the war, and so they were using Balin as like the front to their company to kind of make them seem legitimate. Like, oh, it's not being run by a Nazi, it's being run by Balin, but the Nazis are sort of pulling the strings behind the scenes, and Balin wants to take over himself for real, not just for pretend. He's like a pretend leader at first, but he wants to become the real leader, and so he tries to ignore the Nazis, and they chase after him, and but the Nazi plot is not super important to the movie, except, I mean, it's not the most interesting part of the movie, but it's really crucial to remember that the whole idea, the theme set up at the beginning of the movie, that Johnny and Gilda and Balin were all future, no past. We're reinventing ourselves. But that's what the Nazis are trying to do in Argentina. They're trying to escape the past of being, their Nazi associations. They're just going to be good businessmen or whatever. This did happen, by the way, after World War II. One of America's dark secrets that we don't like to talk about is during World War II, the Nazis were very good at rocket technology. And they used their rocket technology during World War II to shoot missiles at London. And they were really good at it. The Nazi scientists could like build a weapon and then shoot it and get it to land exactly where they wanted it to, quite far away from Germany to London. So good job. When the war ended, though, America's next thing they were interested in was beating the Russians. And one of the things they wanted to beat the Russians at was getting to the moon. And we did. America did get to, we did, I don't know. I'm not loving identifying myself like we America, like, okay. But Americans wanted to get to the moon and get there before the Russians. And Americans did get to the moon before the Russians. How did they do that? Well, we don't like to talk about, like, oh, American space technology, NASA. It was Nazis. We hired, Nazis are really good at rockets and rocket technology, right? So how are we going to get to the moon first? Let's take Nazi scientists and have them help in our space program. Since they're so good at shooting rockets off and getting them to land exactly where they want them to land, let's have them run our space program. So the dark history, if you think of the landing on the moon as being this great American triumph, Nazi science was behind a lot of that, and Nazi scientists, and Nazi scientists, guys that probably should have been in jail for killing lots of people, instead were rewarded for helping the American government. So I just mention this because, again, this is a real life situation where people wanted to leave their Nazi past behind and reinvent themselves, just like Gilda and Balin and Johnny, and the fact that Nazis are like a key thing in this movie, trying to reinvent themselves in Argentina. Okay, cool. I'll see you guys in the next movie.